I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hornady Podcast. Thanks for joining us on the show. I'm your host, Seth Swerzik, and I'm joined today around the table to my right, our custom die engineer, Ben Syring, and across the table, sales service technician, Matt Ritchie, and marketeer, Preston Lentfer. Guys, thanks for coming around the table today.
Oh, not a problem.
One of my favorite topics.
Yeah. Favorite topics, and the topic we've got spooled up today is reloading. And we're going to leave it pretty broad, and I'm hoping to just kind of maybe go around the table and share our different experiences and go over our different procedures and the different tools that we have and when we employ those and how we employ them, because we've got a ton of different experience. You know, you've got the 3-gunner that's reloading. You've got the bench rest shooter, the F-class guy, the PRS guy, the guy that's loading for a cartridge that you can't buy ammo for. I mean, there's just a ton of reasons to reload. And, you know, we've all got our different niches. And I'm excited to hear about your specific niche and how you go into reloading and maybe how you got into reloading. Because that's always a neat story, too. I know there's a lot of tradition in reloading for a lot of folks, and that's something that I think is pretty cool. So, without further ado, you know, beside me here, Ben, you've been at the helm of our custom die division now for quite a while. And with that, you also get to go around to trade shows and shooting events and media events, and you get to instruct people in reloading and give those classes. So, if anybody has, you know, that 30,000-foot view over reloading as a broad topic, it's probably you. So, what do you see, you know, the trends? What got you into it, and what's your experience?
Well, when I was younger, before I worked here, of course, Dad would constantly say, "You're wasting lead, kid, you're wasting lead." I just wanted to shoot. Didn't matter what I was shooting, from wrens, which I got in trouble for shooting wrens, to robins, to squirrels, to rabbits,
The
to
North
fence
American
posts, to whatever I could shoot, I was
Neighbor's
shooting.
cat.
North American Songbird Slam. Ben
So,
at 13.
yeah, so I figured out a way, obviously, this reloading thing, I could do it a little cheaper and keep shooting. And it's been a passion of mine since that point. Obviously came to work here, and I learned even more. You know, before you just took your die and screwed it on the shell holder and shoved your case in it and stuck a bullet in it and powder and primer and went back to shooting. But now the accuracy that can be gained over some factory ammo is phenomenal with the tools and the techniques that we have out there today. I suppose in my personal experience, and I do it with everything. You mentioned, you know, PRS and F-class and all the different classes all the way down to hunting. I have the same process for everything.
Okay.
Except for pistol. Pistol just, I mean, size it, put a bullet in and go, because I don't think for the distances that you shoot that you're going to notice anything by doing any of these techniques that we talk about. But I start with my dirty cases, and you would disagree with me, but I deprime everything because I clean, and the way I clean is usually a sonic tumbler. If they're really dirty, I use the rotary tumbler with the steel pins.
Yeah.
The reason I do that is because I'm very particular. I want primer seated at the same depth every time. And when you fire a case, there's carbon left in the bottom of that primer pocket.
There is.
And I'm not necessarily going to wipe the carbon out every one, but the sonic cleaner or a rotary tumbler does a very good job at removing that carbon, so that I know when I seat my next primer, it's good. So I want the primers out of the way before I start to clean. And then I'll check my brass for length.
Is there
obviously.
any science behind the cleanliness of the primer pocket? Because I just want it flush or below, and I want it to go off.
And you're probably right, and you probably can't measure the accuracy gained or the science behind that. But if I can have them all flush, or all 2,000ths below flush, or all 3,000ths below flush, to me that's more consistent.
Yeah, and let me caveat, I don't do bench rest, I don't do F-class. Maybe there it does make a difference.
Maybe.
And it might. And it's probably not a measurable distance, but I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's just put it there. You know, that's what I like to do.
I was about to say that. Not call you a nerd, but as a gifted machinist, as we've learned and talked about in other podcasts, machinists can hold tolerances that mean absolutely nothing in the world of gunsmithing. It's cool you can hold that tolerance, but it's not doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have that personality type anyway, if you can control a variable, let's control it so you know what it is.
Yep. So I know that when I miss or when I don't hit where I want to, I've poured everything that I know into my equipment, my ammunition. So it was just me, period. I want to eliminate all those factors. Just a bad shot. It could be. Not very often. So I start there. Obviously, for some cartridges, I'll use a headspace gauge when I set up my die, because I firmly believe, and I teach this in my classes, that the first thing you can do to make your rifle more accurate, or your ammunition, give it the possibility to be more accurate, is first reload it. Secondly is control your headspace.
Yep.
Headspace is a big factor. You look at any SAMI print or even CIP specs, and you'll see tolerances in there, where they have a headspace and it could be plus 10 or minus 10, and your cartridge can be anywhere in there.
Yeah, that's 308 comes to mind.
Yeah.
308. Belted magnums, anything with a belt on it.
And you might have two rifles, so when you start doing this headspace thing, you're probably going to have to keep your ammo separate if they're not exactly the same, because I like to give about a 3/1000 headspace bump.
Yeah.
I'll go a little bit more if I feel like I may be hiking in the mountains, I'm not in the best of shape, and going to be huffing and a puffing, and I need to make sure that the next round, sometimes the second round is more important than the first. Piss off a line with the first one, you better hope the next one gets in there. You know what I'm saying? So I like to control that kind of based on what I do.
I'll throw this out there. You mentioned 3, sometimes more, thousands.
Yeah.
Bump. I mean, it's all personal preference.
Yep.
I'll go 1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Because I know that brass did not elastically expand to the chamber walls
and
stay right there.
Right, it springs back. There's always spring back.
Yep.
So on my type of stuff, I don't mind it being a thou, because I likely have a little bit more than that, but I'll shoot for 2 myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm curious. You said you'll do it on some of your cartridge. You'll control the headspace. What decides that for you?
If I'm in a hunting condition where I think that the shot might not be a perfect shot, I want the next one to follow in and go in the chamber. If I know it's going to be bad weather conditions or
super dusty,
blowy, dirty, I need the next round to get in there. The chamber, everybody knows we get the first one to chamber every time.
Well, I guess are there some cartridges that you won't check headspace for at all? You'll just screw the die down to the shell holder, or are you checking that on all your rifle cases?
All my rifle cases, I check the headspace. And sometimes, many of my dies, because of where I work, are custom dies anyway. Even for cartridges like the 308, because of the, if you look at a SAMI max and min between chamber and cartridge, well, I'm just going to pull a dimension, don't quote me, but let's say it's 450 at the shoulder. Chamber will be 451. That's probably a perfect fit. I mean, we got a 450 cartridge going to a 451 chamber. You can't get too much better than that. All right. But SAMI gives a tolerance on that 450 cartridge. And usually it's -7. Right. So that all of a sudden can be, instead of 450, it can be 443. Okay. And the 451 chamber usually is +2. So now we're 455 or 450, do the math, whatever. 451, yes, 443. That's right.
10 thou.
Or 11 thou. So that's what you can end up. And that's why if I purchase a set of dies or get a set of dies, I check all the dimensions. I'll check the base from a fired case. I'll check the shoulder from a fired case. I don't worry too much about the neck, because your expander ball is going to do it. I'm not a fan of match grade dies, and we can get into that later, but I check shoulder and base, and then I size the case and I measure that again. If I'm getting about 3/1000s, I'm happy with that. Some of them I can go less, but if I'm getting more than 3, I usually shoot for a custom die.
Yeah.
I want to control that expansion in the chamber, so when it does because eventually the brass will fire spring back. It'll spring back less every time as it work hardens, and then it'll eventually fit your chamber. This is why neck sizing works. I usually don't do it because I get my brass worked out there, and with a custom die, when you're got a custom fit every time, the neck sizing I found to be
that's
null
another
and
topic.
void.
I feel like neck sizing is almost
It can
out
be
of
on its
vogue.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
it's
whole
just
reason, because the
on
brass
its way
brings
out.
back that you can neck size. But with the
I just don't
custom
think
world,
many people are doing it anymore.
I don't think so.
yeah, it's probably not as big. In my world, there's still folks that are ordering them and wanting to do custom because your brass will last longer. I'm not touching the body. I'm only messing with the neck. So it seems to last longer. But yeah, I like to control that headspace. My next step obviously is powder. I'm probably a little bit crazy with powder. Working here obviously has given me the ability to own, a powder charge station like that where I can measure it to the grain. I've been known on my, if I'm going to go to the bench, then I'll trickle up to a certain amount in that, and then I hand trickle the rest. One time I even tried to break kernels to make it, till I learned that those kernels are designed that way to burn for a specific burn rate. Did it make a difference? No. Could I measure it? No. But again, I like to control all the variables.
You're
So
experimenting.
it makes me feel good. That's right.
We
Seating
stop doing
dies,
that. We don't advance.
That's right.
Yeah.
Seating dies, I'll seat the primers. I don't worry too much about measuring it. I feel that my cleaning got it to the same point with the same pressure every time when I seat it on my press. I seat my primers on a single stage press. I do not like the hand prime.
Me too.
A lot of people like the hand prime, and that's great if you do.
Yeah.
The point is you're reloading, When I seat the bullets, I've got my own little trick. I obviously set for depth. Sometimes I'll reach out and touch. Depends on the cartridge I'm doing. Sometimes I'll touch the lands or back off of them a little bit, and I try to control that science, doing ladder testing with various different loads and lengths to try to come up with the good one that shoots well. But I'll first I do is take the die apart, and I make sure the stem fits the bullet pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I want a good fit on that bullet with the stem. It's really hard for any manufacturer dies, including ours, to match every bullet that's out there. Your old basic spire points, the stems that come with the standard dies work pretty good. But you may need a custom die if you're shooting, or a custom stem if you're shooting something with a very long ogive like our ELD match or ELDX, which I love. Pretty much everything I hunt with is ELDX. I've even shot, my first PRS realm was with ELDX bullets.
Nice.
So I had a lot of fun doing that. Was there 200 targets, and I broke 135 of them? I thought it was pretty good for the first time out to 1,000 yards. For me, I was pretty impressed.
Sounds
Was
fantastic.
that the gap grind?
Yeah, I was impressed with myself with a hunting rifle. Everybody's shaking their heads looking at me. I'm out there with my hunting rifle.
It's just a crack shot.
Yeah, well, I'm
Six
not a
Creedmoor.
crack shot. Yeah, it was a
Well, I was
six
going to
Creed.
say, in the world of hunting rifles,
It's a good one.
skirts the line
Yeah,
between hunting
it's-
rifle and
Yeah, it was built by George Gardner. It's a GA Precision. It's 6 Creedmoor.
Manor stock. Yeah,
I could have built it myself, but it's one of those deals where sometimes time is...
Probably could have mounted your scope yourself too.
Probably could have, but I had you do it, Preston, and that's better. You get busy and you use the people's expertise as you can. So
absolutely.
Mounted a lot of scopes for a
Yeah.
lot of people here.
yeah. And then one of my little quirks, some people don't agree, like when I go to seat a bullet, I'll bring the press up and I'll feel it seat a little bit. I bring it down and I give it a little bit of a turn.
Give the case a turn.
I let it, I don't know,
Find
I
its
call
own
it do
home.
the hula dance.
I used to
So
do
it
that.
finds its home, and I turn it probably 3 times before I seat it home, check my lengths, and once I'm good there, I do use comparators, obviously the bullet comparator over the tip, and that depends whether it's a hunting round or whether I'm really going to go to the range and really get crazy with it. Bullet comparator will measure on my ogive, which is a more accurate spot in the manufacturer bullet. If you understand how bullets are manufactured, tips can vary, such as everybody's seen bolt tail hollow points. Depends on how they're trimmed and everything on the end as far as consistency and length.
Yep.
So the length from the base of the bullet to a spot on the ogive is a more accurate spot to measure. I've tried to get extreme. I've tried to sort bullets by length, put them in different piles, and it made me feel good, but it was a lot of time and didn't really notice much.
My chest hurt when you said that.
Yeah. Concentricity.
I was gonna bring
I have
up
a
if you didn't.
concentricity gauge. I'll throw them on there and make sure that I'm seating straight because I don't want to, our concentricity gauge, it has the ability to straighten them, but it's not to me, I seen a poster one time when I was a kid, and that thing has stuck with me. There was a chicken up on a shelf laying an egg, and the egg would fall here and break, and this guy would pick the egg up and tape it and put it in a carton. To me, get the chicken off the shelf and get it down here so the egg doesn't break, right?
Right.
It's the same concept for here, and I've used this throughout my life. Let's fix the problem at its source. The source is the seating or your necks or something. Something else is going on, so I don't like to seat a bunch of crooked ones and then straighten them. To me, that's just a checker. I have been successful at taking factory ammo, firing a group, straightening factory ammo, and firing a better group. So I believe that concentricity is a big deal.
Sure.
You want to enter the bore true and concentric, then it'll come out the end true and concentric, in my opinion.
We'll all kind of take our turns, but on that note, I won't check concentricity anymore. I won't even check it because of the cartridges that I'm shooting. But I had to fix concentricity on a 300 Win mag that I had, or it was not going to work. And we've talked about 300 Win mag. We kind of beat up on it a little bit, but the free bore on it is just so big.
Yeah, the free bore diameter is...
I want to make sure, I had to get it close to the lens for that gun to shoot, and I had to make sure concentricity was good, so it had the best chance possible.
I think we talked about it in one of the previous podcasts, if some of our listeners were listening, but I have a 300 Win mag that I tried to do the slant thing. My bullet's out the end of the bore, or out the end of the cartridge. However, it still shoots me into the deer.
Exactly.
And it was my father's rifle, so I don't want to rebarrel it. I'm just going to keep shooting
Leave it.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it alone, and someday my kids and hopefully grandkids will still kill deer with it, so I don't try to put too many rounds on it. But
maybe it'll have half of the rifling at that point.
Yeah. As long as it's killing deer, I guess. But those are some of my little tricks. I'm sure there's more that I skip over. It's hard to
we'll go
talk
around
if I'm not. Everybody gets a chance to talk, and I could take up this whole podcast.
Well, I was going to say, as we're all talking, I'm sure stuff will come to mind, and I want this to be an open forum. One real good point, though, I want to clear something up. Ben mentioned he's not a big fan of match grade dies, and for more specifically, just for the listener, for clarity, he's talking about bushing dies.
Bushing style, right.
So for us, our match grade dies use bushings, and you can run that with and without an expander ball. So just clear that up. And the second thing was he mentioned the concentricity tool. You helped design that. You designed that concentricity tool. And what's unique about ours is that it measures on the center line of the entire cartridge.
Right.
Where most of them on the market are checking it against the shoulder or the neck.
Shoulder or the neck, or you're laying your
or
cartridge.
A body taper almost.
You're laying your taper on balls.
Mm-hmm. Ball bearings,
Yeah, and we all know that when that fits in there, if our headspace is right and we're pushing against the bolt, this shouldn't be touching
anything, right?
So I don't want to check my concentricity on that.
You want it
I want to check it from the shoulder, so ours goes from the bullet tip to the base of the case.
Yeah, so
that's why I like that.
Yeah, it's unique in the market in that.
I should clarify match grade dies too. They have their purpose. For folks that want to control their neck, again, I'm the custom guy, so I've already got my necks where I want them, and then I build a custom die to give me the neck tension I want because I build the diameter in the neck die. Folks that use bushing dies want to control that neck tension themselves. They don't want the expander pulling back through, changing their headspace, because it can happen if you've got a lot of size down and you pull back through trying to set your headspace. It can change it a little bit. Yeah, pulls your shoulder a little bit. But it's one of those deals where, again, being a nerd, being an engineer, because that bushing can go in and out of there has to be clearance. So to me, the concentricity between the body and the neck can vary.
Slightly.
Doesn't matter to a lot of folks. To me, I get straighter concentricity cartridge with a standard full-length die, or I should say custom full-length die. So that's what I meant by clarity. They're great dies. Mm-hmm. We still build them, and we have people ordering custom ones all the time.
I'll play devil's advocate. I think the match-grade dies are super useful in some cases. And again, I think it comes down to the cartridge you're shooting, but unfortunately, when you are designing just a custom grade die, we have to take into account the SAMI prints, the CIP prints, and then all of the manufacturer's variance in neck wall thickness.
Exactly.
Brass,
So sometimes we can get quite a bit of neck tension. Now, hindsight, after doing a little bit of testing in recent years, I haven't found excessive neck tension to be an issue, but when I can put that bushing in there, that gives me 2 thousandths worth of neck tension, exactly
Mhm.
what I want. I jump for joy.
Yeah, and
Gosh darn.
there's two ways to skin that cat, as we'd say. You can turn your necks, so you get
Absolutely
the
not.
tension you want.
Well,
He doesn't want to turn necks, but match grade dies your
that,
answer.
that was
so-
the other thing I was going to add to it is when we're talking to our customers, when they're interested in a match grade die, that's the other layer I add to it is, are you going to turn your necks? Because to really utilize the full potential of that bushing, you need to have consistent neck wall thickness. And some of them, it goes kind of over above and beyond what they're willing to do or understand. And so point them in custom grade. Just get a custom grade new dimension die.
Now, as much as I joke about neck turning and never ever doing it, Ben, I believe you designed that one as well, our neck turning tool.
It was based off the same concept, which was originally our trimmer.
Right.
But the neck turn tool wasn't actually designed by me. I just had my inputs on it. That's all.
Well, if I had to neck turn, and hopefully I never do ever again, I would use ours.
That tool
Because
is
you can
the way
make
to
it
go.
so fast.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like having a mini lathe.
Yeah.
It
Put
really
your drill
is.
on there and shove it in there. We've got 0.5 increments.
Yeah, click adjustable
Um,
increments.
The important part to there is just to make sure that you've sized your case first. Many people don't do that, but you want to size your case first because the mandrels are set up for a sized case. So the inside, an expander ball pulls through that mandrel set up to set that on there tight as the blade comes down and cuts that.
Interesting.
So
Well, in the vein of turning necks, that is, as Preston joked and alluded to, kind of a voodoo practice left for only those crazy souls that shoot in, as we joke, the International House of Pancakes. and around the table, we do have an international bench rest former
Yeah.
international bench rest shooter, and you guys had some I've said this a bunch of times, but you wait till Saturn blocks Jupiter, and then you outside neck turn the cases, and then when the 7th chakra is behind the brow chakra, then you run your expander through there. It's like some super weird.
It's a deep, dark
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
So-
It all depends on how far down you want to go.
Matt, so walk us through your reloading. When you got into it, and you're not a bench rest shooter anymore. You spend more of your time in the precision rifle game. But just for hunting and stuff, what do you find yourself doing? Because obviously you were a pretty proficient reloader to be, successful in bench rest. So what carried over?
Yeah. So, I started out, I had an uncle that reloaded and he just kind of got me into it. Started out, nothing really explained to me, but just, this is what we do. This is step 1. This is step 2. And I just carried on from there. And again, went down the bench rest rabbit hole and got, neck turning, match grade bushing, dies, auto charges and weighing down to 1/10 of a grain. I never got into weighing my cases or weighing primers or anything like that, or weighing down to the 100th or 1,000th of a grain.
Because that's
Didn't-
common practice.
Didn't do any of that. And checked concentricity on everything and corrected it. But I kind of, again, went from there to, PRS stuff. Now the cartridge I run, my little BR Ackley, still shooting a Wildcat, but BR Ackley, I loaded on a progressive. I do size everything on a single stage so I can get that consistent 2 to 3 thousandths of headspace. Then after that, it's chuck it on a progressive and throw powder
Crank 'em
plus or
out.
minus 2 to 3/10 of a grain variance on my powder charge and seat my bullets. I don't even check concentricity anymore. I may check 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But if they're good, I'm rolling with it and I'm cranking out 250 rounds and I'm going to go shoot a match.
yeah,
So-
the science behind that though, with the science behind chambers nowadays,
Yeah.
has tightened them up a lot. We mentioned the 300 Win Mag a lot. The free bore is pretty big. I think some of the newer
The
chambers
neck
out,
is really short.
yeah, and some of the newer chambers we have that free bore, just a half thou over bullet.
Yeah, half to 8/10.
Yeah, and that I think does a better job at not eliminating, but concentricity isn't quite as big a deal because we're holding it straight.
Mhm.
Well, and bullet jump becomes less critical as
less
well.
critical.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like I said, I've started out and I went down that rabbit hole and got all the equipment and really went deep into it. And now I turn my necks because I have to. I use a case that I have that has thicker walls than what our floating alignment sleeve will allow when I try to seat a bullet. So I've got to turn my necks down a little bit, take a thou off, and I'm good. But then it's one and done there. So, but yeah, don't check concentricity.
So
I run
what did reloading look like for you when you were shooting bench rests?
Yeah. So I would deprime my cases, then I'd sonic clean them, and then resize them, then sonic clean them again, just to get that excess lube off. Then prime powder, but like I said, measuring powder down to with the auto charges. I never got any more picky than that.
But
Tenth of a grain.
You weren't weighing primers.
No.
Weren't sorting cases.
No. Yeah, there's guys. Yeah, some of those guys.
Those guys do.
Yeah, they do, and they would lube their cases with. Gosh, dang it. What's the powder?
Imperial
stuff?
sizing. Oh, powder graphite.
Graphite. There we go. Powder graphite, and they would seat their bullets, and after they dumped their powder, they seat their bullets, and then they would set them upside down in their trays. So for whatever reason, they thought that powder needed to be down against the bullet, and then when they went to the match, they'd turn them all over and shake them before they. Yeah, just.
You can that system only works though on the third Sunday of every odd month.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like you said, they wait for the planets to align, right?
Yeah.
And then they don't even touch their rifle. They just kind of get behind it and let the rifle do the work.
And we're kind of bagging on that sport.
Oh,
we're not bad. That's a great discipline.
But there's some guys that they're great guys and they shoot a lot of small groups at long distance.
A lot of tiny groups.
It's fun to watch and it's fun to be a part of, but I'm more applicable to. I'm more for what's applicable to what I do when I'm hunting and stuff like that.
You're shooting coyotes on the ranch, and you're hunting deer and antelope and elk and running around. And
I met a very interesting gentleman in the custom world that shot the international bench rest stuff, or 600. I don't know what it was. It was something F-class something. He didn't seat his bullets. He seated them in the chamber.
Yeah.
So like he would set the bullet just lightly on top. And when it bolt closed, that's what seated.
So what was he running, like a half a thou neck tension?
I don't even remember, but I just remember he didn't need a seating die because he seats it in the chamber.
Yeah, and that's the back to the match grade dies. I was running the match grade dies and running light neck tension because I was just kissing the lands of my rifling. But that being new into it, I got ready for 1,000-yard nationals. It was in Missoula, Montana, and I was in a kind of working a full-time job and stuff like that. I didn't have kids, all that. I kind of waited till last minute and I started resizing my brass and I didn't check my neck tension. And I was running like a thou to a half thou, and that bit me hard at nationals. Get down there and you don't have any neck tension, you don't get good ignition. So my velocities were varying. I literally shot probably a 2-inch wide group, but it was 12 inches tall.
Because of the velocity.
It was just like this on that target.
Yeah.
Hypercritical.
I got a little story from my tech days. Now that we want to talk about neck tension, had a caller call in. You'll remember this one. Called in and said, I don't remember how it went, but the long and the short of it was he was taking his pistol brass. He would knock out the primer with a nail and a hammer. He would put a new primer back in with a rubber mallet, and then he would put powder in and super glue his bullets back into his cases.
Interesting.
Wow.
And I said, sir, you need to stop what you're doing right now and get a die set and a press. This is dangerous.
I remember that. I remember those words exactly.
Gunpowder's flammable, but primers go bang.
Yeah.
Super gluing bullets in, no neck tension.
Wow. That is pretty bizarre. So, that is interesting, Max. I thought your reloading process for the bench rest stuff would be a little bit different, but
it's one of those things. It all and how far down the rabbit hole you want to go and want to invest in it. And I mean, again, like I alluded to, family, full-time job, an hour commute one way to work. That doesn't leave a lot of time to spend
tinkering.
Hours at the
and then you got to travel. I mean, you're
8,
10, 12 hours, getting to Missoula, Montana or wherever. And bench rest seems to be super popular in that neck of the woods.
Well, and if you'd have told me 20 years that somebody could take a target at 1,000 yards and shoot a 2-inch group, I'd have said, no, they can't.
Yeah.
It's been done, right? I mean, what's the record? Isn't it 1.8 or 1.9 or something?
It's in that two or less.
Two
realm.
something.
Yeah.
I think the record at
crazy.
600 is like 6/10.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6/10 at 600 yards. That is a different
than an
realm.
inch.
Yeah,
folks.
it's
crazy.
They do get some small groups, and there's guys there that shoot it, and they're consistent in shooting small groups, and they can read the wind. But those are impressive guns. They've got a lot of money invested into it, and a lot of money in their rest, and so it's just
when they cough on the trigger, that rifle comes straight back. And
Yep.
then when they put it back, it goes straight
Push
forward,
forward.
and it's right
Yep.
there.
And again, at 1,000 yards, velocity
Spread. Yeah.
is paramount.
Mhm.
That's probably ultimately what you guys are loading for
Yeah.
in that circuit is, I mean, velocity spreads are always important,
Yeah.
but in that particular game,
Yeah.
I mean, especially at 1,000, at 600, it's probably a lot less
Yeah.
critical, but at 1,000 yards,
That's a
You're-
big deal.
you're loading
Yeah.
for velocity.
What kind of
consistency.
EVs do you typically try to go for in that realm?
I would say for me personally, it was 15 or less for extreme spreads, and then SDs in the single digits.
The
Nice.
benchmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All
but
right.
then and then
Wow.
it just comes down to reading the wind. Being able to see that wind shift and see what the flags are doing if they've got flags, and go from there.
You tell me you didn't just hold left edge the whole time?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Preston, you had not participated in International House of Pancakes, but you have gone down crazy rabbit holes in your reloading efforts.
Yeah, thanks to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we're all, short rabbit holes, luckily.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's your reloading sequence and history look like?
Well, history was OCW, all the ladders, stuff like that, shoot 3-shot groups and all sorts of different powder charges, and I don't do any of it anymore.
No,
None.
it's all a joke.
Well, it's not a joke.
You just
Might
don't
not
do
be
it.
a joke, but again, a little illusion, sample size podcast coming up. But nowadays, I'm shooting a minimum of 10 shots with the given powder that I want, a grain or two under max. And that's, if it doesn't work there, I'm probably getting a different barrel.
Wow.
Or changing bullet, changing the powder. But, I mean, big changes, not
Yeah.
tweaking things a few tenths here or there.
You're just looking for, I'm trying to hit a steel plate or an animal. How am I going to
Yep.
do that consistently?
I want, if I'm shooting a 10-shot group, I'd like it to be 1.1 to 1.2 or less inches, 10 shots at 100 yards. And if the velocity is where I want it to be and the spreads are not outlandish, but honestly, spreads and muzzle velocities with the way that I'm doing it, not bench rest, not F-class stuff, if you shoot enough shots, it all kind of evens out.
Yeah.
And people are typically pretty bad at that, shooting enough shots for things to even out. You'll see pictures of magneto speeds with a 3 SD, but there's 3 shots there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shoot more, and you'll find out it's
The more you
probably
shoot,
not
the
that
better
good.
the average.
So these days, yeah, I'm shooting for PRS type stuff. I am loading progressively.
Oh,
Absolutely.
precision rifle on a progressive, similar to what Matt said.
Yep.
Yep.
I will size off. I'll wash. I almost said borscht.
He's
Almost. I thought
he's from Nebraska. He
I'm from
washes.
southern
he washes
Nebraska.
things.
He washes his brass.
So big fan of wet tumbling with the stainless steel pins.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I really do like that. I'll size, trim, and then go back into a corncob tumbler.
Why do you like the pins, the steel pins?
I don't know. I just
Because it gets it real clean.
They do a
It's
great
really
job.
good.
And it
It's
doesn't,
fast.
doesn't
It's
take
one-
4 hours.
Yeah, it's one and done.
and
One
they're
step.
really shiny.
You
Yeah.
can take government surplus 308 and run it through one of those for an hour. It comes out like it's brand new.
I had some-
There's an old video, an older video on the YouTube channel, the Hornady YouTube channel, of me cleaning brass with a wet tumbler, and it was 45 ACP range brass, just the scuzz of the scuzz,
Mhm.
and it looked brand new, and we were done.
Sure.
Yeah, I've taken some 223 5.56 NATO stuff that my brother had in his garage for like 5 years in an ice cream bucket, and then put it in there.
It just
brand
does a
new.
good job.
Yeah,
And the reason we deprime is so those pins can work on that primer pocket and clean that carbon out of there.
Yeah, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. I don't know why I do though.
I'll throw this in there just to clarify why I was like, primer pockets to me, whatever. In the history of my shooting career, I've never diagnosed an accuracy problem and was like, oh,
I
had
didn't
dirty-
clean my primer
dirty
pockets.
primer pockets.
Darn it!
And for me,
Primer pockets.
like Matt had mentioned, the full-time job,
Yeah.
taking care of your property, the kids and football practice, and you're running around and whatever, just normal everyday stuff. I don't want to do a process and then clean the brass and then do another process. I would rather just leave the primers in there, clean the brass, and then resize and deprime in one step rather than deprime, wash, and then resize the case. For me, it's just efficiency, and I've
Yeah.
never really seen it be a tangible problem.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I
agree.
don't shoot F class or any of those, really accuracy demanding type sports.
I feel like, and I universal deprime all my brass before it goes in because I feel like it lets my solution last longer. If you get all of that or carbon and everything out of those primer pockets in that solution, it's dirty.
You're talking
your
sonic
pin.
cleaner.
In the wet tumbler.
Oh,
But that's just me. I mean, it's dirty enough.
we're all OCD in our own way, and I
Yeah,
disagree
exactly.
with you.
But
I
it's-
disagree with Ben on most everything, but I disagree with that.
Yeah, Mr. 6mm oblong, bring me a case that's not even round.
There's nothing I could have done about that.
Well, we built you a die.
Yeah.
So on your progressive, you're loading for plate matches, NRL Hunter,
Yes.
PRS.
1 to 2.5 MOA targets.
Yeah,
You
so
know?
you're looking for minute of angle accuracy and running it right through the progressive. Do you resize on the progressive or do you resize on the single stage?
Progressive.
Really?
Yeah.
So the
Really?
deal with the progressive for the listeners.
The cool thing for me is I can lube a whole bunch of cases and I can just grab handle stroke, and it's coming off.
Yeah.
Like
Finished product.
it's just fast. It's a fast thing.
Yeah.
So it's about
And I'll
efficiency.
prime on the progressive too because I can take more 1911 primer filler. I can fill the tube up, not press
Pick 'em
it,
up one at a
so I
time.
can fill it up quickly, 15 seconds or less. I'm priming,
Yeah.
and it's coming off in batches.
Yep. Well,
So-
one of the nuances with running a progressive and resizing is the plate that's on a progressive press, our progressive press, has a little bit of flex because it's held by a center bolt, and you're at basically an infinite mechanical advantage when you cam that press over.
Correct.
And if that force isn't evenly distributed on all 5 stations, that plate can rock. I mean, we're talking it barely measurable, but when you're bumping shoulders, now you've got the consistency of the brass that you're working with, or how work hardened it is, plus that plate flexing a thou. So you might be letting your headspace move just a little bit. And if you're priming on one stroke but not on the other, or seating a bullet or not seating a bullet, it can change that.
Yeah.
So
Well, you'll find when you set up a progressive to do that, I don't personally load any rifle other than, I call that press, and again, it's a personal opinion, that's my mag dump press. So 308, 223, 45 auto, 9mm, I put them through there. But when you find for those folks that do this accuracy thing on that press, you'll set that die, which is your first station, right? Your full-length die, you'll set the headspace just right. But after you fill it back up,
every
you fill the
station's got a
station,
case.
you're seating, you're dropping powder, you're priming, and you're doing everything crimping if you're crimping, you'll have to go back most of the time and look at that die because it's probably sizing just a little bit more because now we've got everything balancing that out. So you may have to readjust that. Do you find that necessary?
Let me say, when I do progressive loading, it's batch loading. So I'm checking everything for that specific batch, right?
Okay.
And so, for instance, last little bit of loading I did on there was 6 arc.
Okay.
It was a minimum of 3 different lots of brass, could be more, but 3 different lots of brass, and my headspace did not change throughout. And that same batch, I will load to mag length, book recommendation, whatever. I'm not chasing lands or anything like that anymore, especially in an arc. That batch of ammo that I made, I think it was 1,400, shot 1.1 inches for 20 shots at 200 yards.
That's half-minute
That's
ammo.
good. That's good. That's good ammo.
And that's legit half-minute
That's
ammo.
20 shots.
But you're not sizing and seating then. You're doing it one step at a time
When
on
I
a
do sizing,
progressive.
I like to run it in corn cob so I can get the lube off.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay.
So
That
when,
changes
when,
what
when
I
that
said
comes
earlier.
back, I have 2 of these, and I'll run
two
2
auto
auto
charges.
charges with the powder funnel on the AP, and I can't keep up with 2. Like 1 probably be feasible, but I can't
Right.
keep up with 2, and I'm loading them as fast as I can.
So you're still dumping powder in your AP where Matt is using the powder thrower.
Case activated powder drop, but running Varget with those smaller, extruded
size.
kernels,
Yeah.
it doesn't bind up as often.
Shortcut.
Say like 4350 or something.
Yeah,
So
I
you have longer kernel.
likely could, and I'm sure that if you did enough testing, there's a measurable difference to say, a powder measure versus an auto charge is going to give you X more feet per second extreme spread. But
for what we're doing.
many people have ran a darn powder measure with Varget. You
Successfully.
yourself
Obviously
successfully and do
successfully.
it quite well.
It's usually for me, it's plus or minus 0.2 of a grain,
And the majority of them are plus or minus 1.
Yeah, that's remarkable. If you rewind the clocks now, not even that far ago, but let's just say 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, nobody was loading precision rifle on a progressive. And now I feel like it's pretty common when you're getting into, you go to a bench rest match, how many rounds you shoot in a total weekend?
You would in a weekend, you would shoot
Quite a bit.
250.
Yeah.
So no more. I would say no more than maybe like a PRS match. But
so the volume of ammo hasn't changed per se, but the acceptable tolerances have between when F class and bench rest were really really popular, and then the precision rifle thing came on the scene. It was about speed and less about precision, but you're still getting more than acceptable accuracy.
Well, and a lot of things have come a long way because of the precision rifle series, barrels, scopes. And we talk about that all the time, but so many more good barrels out there now.
Yeah,
and we literally just talked to Jacob, who's been on the podcast. We were at a match in Price, Utah last weekend. We're talking to another case manufacturer, and he commended us on how well we've done with the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6.5 PRC, 300 PRC, and 6 ARC. Just how consistent they were. And, like Jacob said, when we designed the chamber and the cartridge to work together, there's inherent accuracy built into that. That just makes reloading that much easier.
It really does. There's some cartridges like your BR, the BRA, the BRX, the Creedmoors, the ARC is one of them, but there's the Dasher is another one people love to hate. But there's some cartridges that, I like to run the 6GT or the 6 Dasher or whatever because it's so easy to load for. With the right chamber, they're pretty much all easy to load for. And I feel like that forgiveness is
With
paramount.
one of the Palma chambers, I could probably load 308 on a progressive.
Yeah.
With Sammy,
probably
not.
I want to say that was kind of an aha moment with the design of the 6.5 Creedmoor. That's where we realized, hey, chamber, cartridge together design is
and now
huge.
Factory ammo is shooting better than any factory ammo we're making. 100%.
Well, it likely started before that, and it doesn't get the credit that it ever really deserved.
TC?
But the 30 TC,
you're right. It did really start with that.
Yep.
And it's in that you could load that progressively and shoot a match with it.
Well, along that progressive route, you would be surprised, or at least I am at the number, because I'm a single stage rifle guy. The number of folks that are ordering custom 338 or shell plates for the 338 Lapua.
Yeah.
They're loading their Lapua progressively.
Wow.
taking dies out then too. Every time they see the bullet.
No, actually, they've got it figured out. I haven't heard any complaints about that.
Wow.
I built if I'm going to do it, I would put a bushing in behind the alignment sleeve so that it couldn't drop below, and then then the bullet will clear it when I see it.
Interesting. Well, I will just throw my 2 cents in here because I have kind of gone. I didn't shoot bench rest, but I kind of had some of that mentality back in the day. So grew up. Dad was a reloader, and he had an old Pacific C press and had Bear dies and Pacific dies and a few older Hornady sets, the Durachrome line.
The old Durachromes.
Powder in a metal can, and he reloaded for everything. And wasn't a hot rod, wasn't pushing speed, would always, be, significantly under max, and was just, varmint shooting and big game hunting. So that was kind of what we grew up doing. And then when I started in the precision rifle game, I'm learning all these techniques for the first time that all these bench resters are doing and all these custom guys are doing. So, Lonnie Hummel was in charge of our custom die shop before Ben took over. And so he was upstairs in tech and just a wealth of knowledge, answering the phone still, getting after it. I think most of his calls were outgoing.
Lonnie has forgotten more than I think cumulatively that we'll ever know.
So Lonnie, learned some techniques from him. So I'm shooting precision rifle with a 308 Winchester, and I think it was 400 sticks of brass, and I put a light load of Varget with I think it's 180 grain spire point. Fired all 400 over the course of a bunch of time, and then deprimed them, deburred the flash holes. Outside,
I remember deburring flash holes. I used to do that.
Outside neck turned the brass. Corncob media tumbled it, and then seated primers on the classic press. Measured depth about every 10 just to make sure I was, everything was good. Trickled powder out and just got into loading things to the, not just the 10th, but in a lot of cases the 100th of a grain, and measuring every single base to ogive measurement on every cartridge I loaded, and didn't have any kids, didn't even have a mortgage at the time. So, I didn't have a yard to mow. I mean, that's what I was doing. And it was fun, and I learned a lot. And you can learn a lot as a marksman just by shooting a .308 Winchester, because that is that forces you to gain some shooting skill. But the reloading practices that I had didn't really correlate to, anything significant as far as me being a good shooter. It's just that's what I was doing. And then I got my first custom rifle. I had my first custom rifle built, and it was going to be my end-all hunt the continent rifle.
How many rifles ago was that?
It's a few. My wife doesn't listen to the podcast, so
you're safe.
So, anyways, a 7mm Remington Magnum. I had I think an 8-twist, 22-inch fluted barrel. Thing was a looker. Anyways, and I took those same those same reloading principles to that 7 mag, and I outside neck turn, and I was trickling powder, and I had a little bit of difficulty getting that thing to shoot well, which in hindsight was just small sample size. I was shooting 3 and 5 shot groups, and that's just not enough. Anyways, I ended up getting it dialed in. It shot really well, but I was outside neck turning, weighing things to the kernel, measuring all kinds of stuff, seating it out to the lands. That was my first belted Magnum that I was really serious about loading for. So I was using the headspace comparator, and I set that up to headspace off the shoulder, not the belt. So I was pushing the shoulders back 2 or 3 thou, measuring the bullets with our bullet comparator, setting them 30 thou off the lands, working powder charges up, and it was really a lot of fun. And again, didn't really produce anything. And then as I got more serious in the precision rifle game, what happened was all of those reloading practices where I was using tweezers to measure, to drop a kernel onto the load cell, all that went out the window, because now I needed accuracy, but I also needed volume. And then it turned into, guess I'm not deburring flash holes anymore. Guess I'm not depriming before I clean the cases. And then it morphed into, I'm very similar to what Preston and Matt had to say about, I need volume and it needs to be accurate enough. And what I'm looking for is half to 1, usually half to 3/4 of a minute at 200 yards on a 20-shot sample is what I'm looking for. So if I can shoot 1.75 inches, roughly 1.8 inches at 200 yards on a 20-shot string, and my ES is below 40, send it. I'm not playing with nothing. And like Preston also mentioned, I'll pick a bullet that I want. I'll pick a velocity that I want to run it at and I'll pick the powder that I want to use, and I'll load it to that, and then I'll shoot 20. And if it's under 2 minutes of angle, I'm usually going to call it good. I prefer to see, 1.7 at 200 on a 20-shot string and an ES of 40.
What you meant was 2 inches, not 2 MOA.
Yeah, sorry. If it's 2 inches at 200, I might play with something. And again, I'm going to drop the powder charge by a grain. I ain't playing with anything shorter than that. And I usually don't play with overall length very much anyway, because I'm seating to mag length.
Got to fit in the mag.
Got to fit in the mag. And so that was precision rifle. I do that with my hunting rifles now as well. I don't shoot 20-shot strings on a hunting rifle. Usually the barrel contour is not conducive to pounding on it.
Yep.
But it's remarkable how little importance some of those things that I was doing back then have to my real-world shooting now.
But I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did it too. Learned a lot.
Yep.
You can speak with authority because you've done it, to techs.
Yeah.
As a tech,
I've
you've got
found
customers that they're asking you, and you're like, well, I've done it. This is what I experienced.
Yeah, I found that just connecting, in my personal opinion, or from my experience, that's a great way to, like you said, command authority and say, yeah, this is what I've done, and this is why I still do it or I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
For the few volume matches I've done, I've had to skip some of those steps too to get them loaded. The last time I went to one, we didn't have anything on the shelf that I could shoot, so I loaded A-tips. And I skipped a few processes. Shot real well.
Luckily, you can
That
see
was
those
simple.
bullets just about anywhere and put powder behind them,
Yeah,
and they're going to be
but-
accurate.
But I understand it where everybody's coming from
Yeah.
with that. It makes
I
a
still
ton of sense.
do single stage stuff because I
Me too.
with
For hunting, I will. Probably
For-
anything under 100 rounds.
Yeah.
Single stage.
I've never been able to justify setting up an AP for the volumes that I shoot anymore because I don't shoot a ton. But For me, I did go to a powder measure. You know, our favorite bullet engineer. Well, he's not our favorite individually. He's great. But Miles Neville, who's been on the podcast, the more and more testing that he has done and the results that he's seen, I throw powder out of a powder measure now for almost everything. The only time I don't is when the cut size is not conducive. You start looking at Rotumbo or 4831. It doesn't meter very well, and it's not because I'm worried about the variance of the powder charge, because as it turns out, that has not as much as of an impact as people think as well, but just it's hard to measure. But you know, for my match stuff, I'm running a 6mm arc now, usually with a 110A tip, loading 28 grains of Varget right into the case. Bam, just hammering them out, and then I seat them on a single stage press. And I still do. I'll get the bullet started, and then I'll give it a quarter to a half turn, and then I'll finish seating.
I used to do that. I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I seat it, come back down, half turn, hit it.
Yeah, you all three do it.
I do 3 times.
I don't do it.
You
guys do half a turn. He'll do 4.
Yeah, 3.
Correction.
3, yeah, Miles.
If I do it on a single stage, that's what I do. But on a progressive, I just seat
Send it.
Send it.
Yeah. And you know, Miles and I had conversations. You mentioned Miles. First of all, he doesn't feel that if you're really going to measure a group and you think your rifle's that accurate, shoot 100 of them at a target and then measure that group. He said that'll give you a better. And to be honest, he's probably shot more in a year than I have in my lifetime. That guy puts a lot of projectiles downrange.
He burns out barrels regularly, both on his personal rifles, his competition rifles, and in the lab. He is in the lab burning out barrels in our accuracy fixture, doing all kinds of tests, which is remarkable.
Sure, and he's done a lot of things. He doesn't believe concentricity is important. He said, I'll bend one and shoot a group, and you won't know the difference. And that's probably because of this better changer.
He's doing a lot of testing in Creedmoor.
So tons of testing. So he's enlightened a lot of us on some things that probably don't matter. But there's that don't matter thing, and then there's that makes me feel good thing.
I was about to say that.
I feel consistent.
Yeah.
So I want to do this.
Preston alluded to this earlier, but eventually we're going to have a podcast where Miles lays out a lot of the testing results that he's done, and we're talking big sample sizes on everything, people that are, all the things that people do in reloading. But I was going to say, there's the part that, it doesn't matter. Well, that's cool, but it makes me feel really good and look good, feel good, shoot good.
We used to have a saying in college in football.
Yeah.
You got to look good to feel good to play good.
That was
that's right.
Wide receiver Eddie Pertia. I heard said that all the time. Number 8 on the field, number 1 in the locker room.
Number 1 in your hearts.
Yeah. But there is some value to that when you're confident about what you're doing.
Yep.
There is some value there. Mm-hmm. And it's not just reloading. That's that way with everything. There's a reason I have certain tires or certain wheels.
Not to get philosophical on you, but that's everywhere in life.
It is. It really is. I mean, like you can't justify certain things, but it looks the way I like it. So that's what I'm going to go with. And it's the same thing.
Just like you guys remember the very first cartridge you ever loaded, and how scared you were to put it in a rifle. And the very first time you touched it off, that feeling, right? Yeah. So, if you haven't reloaded before, for the folks on our podcast,
it's a good point,
and you want to try it, just do it. The science is there for you. You've got your reloading book. It's all laid out. Don't get carried away with all the things that we're talking about. We've been doing this for years.
Yep. It can be as simple as you make it.
Follow that book, Size it, put a primer in it, get your powder by the charge, and touch off that first round, and you'll be hooked. You'll have that feeling.
I've got that feeling several times.
I'm getting goose pimples. I'm getting goose pimples thinking about it.
But think about it. The first time you did it, it wasn't a Wildcat.
No.
But every Wildcat since, I've shot a gun like this.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
the first time.
I'll say this for the listener out there, Ben, you bring that up because that's a thing that we gloss over because it happened so long ago for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Mine was a 257 Roberts, but that feeling of, oh crap, I made this. And I hope I did this right. Bang.
Yeah.
That feeling is kind of negative, but you feel that exact same intensity in the positive when you use that hand-loaded cartridge and shoot your first animal with something you made.
Or you shoot a small group.
Or you shoot, I've never shot a group that small in my life, and I made those.
I had the same feeling when I built my first rifle, my first Wildcat by myself. I built a 338.6. You mentioned it earlier. And I was scared because I knew I poured everything I could into it. I knew I loaded it right, and I knew I built the specs of the chamber like I wanted. But I actually set it up, clamped it in, stood back with the string and pulled the trigger.
And so that was
and then I was comfortable.
You ordered the reamer specs to your dimension.
Yeah.
You reamed the barrel. Mm-hmm. You threaded the barrel. You did all of it. So it was soup
true,
to nuts.
True to Remington action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now the work in truing to Remington action with the price that you can buy actions at that are ready to go.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to justify buying a Remington and truing it because of the time involved. But
literally had a conversation with a guy on the phone this morning. He was asking me about which action I would buy because we went down rifle if I was going to buy a rifle, and he said, "Well, what about an action if you're going to buy an action?" And it's like, well, first thing I asked is, "What's your budget?"
Yeah.
And then the answer is money. What's your question?
Yeah. And then
exactly.
American Rifle Company, or a lot of it's like the Bighorn. So
yeah, the Zermatt out of Nebraska here, and there's a ton out there now. I mean, I feel like in the last couple of years, the actions have just gone through the roof. There's a ton out there.
Super accurate too, tolerance wise.
Yeah.
Hey, we're talking about reloading.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's get back. Let's start.
Where
it all goes with it.
Was going to go, and Ben mentioned it here just a moment ago. It can be as complex with as many rabbit holes that go to the center of the earth, or it can be as simple as you want it to be.
Simple as you want it to be.
I made it as complex as I ever needed to, and then now I'm
back to down to simple.
Yep. And it really can be. And we're talking what's passionate for us, is match shooting or loading guns that, you talked about your dad's 300 Win Mag or stuff. But what we didn't talk about was just the novelty of reloading. I mean, there's some people that have a few guns and they have ammo for those guns, but there's something cool about rolling your own ammo. It's kind of got a neat factor to it. And we mentioned it at the front half of the podcast. There are guns out there that people inherit or they go and seek out. You're not buying ammo for it. You're not getting brass for it. You have to make the brass, and you're kind of forced into it. But again, it can be as simple as you make it. If you buy the Hornady Handbook of Cartridge Reloading, specifically, we have the first 100 pages of that manual will lay out step by step what you need to do and the equipment that you need to have.
That's right, in its simplest form.
Yeah.
Not only that, it kind of tells you what happens during a firing event.
Yeah. Internal ballistics.
Some people don't really know.
Internal ballistics.
Lays out what excessive headspace can do and the problems it creates.
It's a great.
It's a wealth of knowledge.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
And it keeps it simple. And for the folks out there that are thinking about getting into it, go ahead and do it. Ben says this. I've attended some of Ben's classes or helped instruct a couple of them. He says this at every class. You can get into reloading, but you're not going to get into it to save money. And I suppose if that was your only intention, you could probably make it more cost effective.
Yeah.
But the way he puts it, you're going to shoot more for the same amount.
Yeah. And then I add the caveat, because if you give up any of that money, you don't want to give that up to the wife. So you got to make sure that you're still using
more
the same
powder,
amount.
more primer.
So shoot more. Yeah, shoot more.
Yeah, but you can get in there to save, you're going to save, what do you think, 30, 40, 50% over store-bought, depending on what you're doing?
Yeah, and it depends on what you're doing and with the price of things, sometimes they go
depends
up. Primers.
What year it is.
Yeah, it just depends on sometimes that. But you do save 30 to 50% over the price of new ammunition.
Which is great, but then, there's that satisfaction of it. And, I think not all reloaders are men, but in a field of largely men, there's something drawing, that draws you to it, because it's mechanical, it's tinkering, it's making stuff, and that in and of itself is scratches an itch, I think, for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it's like working on a race car. If you're a hot rodder, it's the same difference.
We said it on the Hunting Rifle Ready podcast. I don't have to reload to hunt with. Our ammo is great. I can't beat it most times.
Yep.
But I'm going to do it anyway.
Yep, exactly.
I've got a big hunt coming up here. I leave for in less than a week, and I could take factory ammo. Factory ammo from the rifle shoots great, but can I really take factory ammo? Could I live with myself if I took 20 rounds on a hunt that I didn't personally guarantee had this much powder and this bullet seated to this length? It gets in your blood a little bit. It gets in your mind, and it starts kind of chewing away at you.
Yeah, but that's it again. That feeling. I knocked down that animal with my load. You get the same feeling as the first time I loaded that load and touched it off.
Yep.
Sometimes the load is the one that I copied from the factory.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I cannot tell a lie. I called the guys down in the lab. Hey, I'm going to load it. I got a week to get 400 rounds ready for this match. I'm going to put 8 tips in it. How many grains of powder should I stick in these Creedmoor cases? They told me the grains. I shoved it in there.
Yep.
That's it. I didn't have time for testing.
No, it works well. And that kind of goes with my theory, though, like the way I've been doing things. If a powder that I know shoots well in that cartridge doesn't shoot well at the grain weight that it should shoot well at, I'm moving on.
Yep.
Different powder, drop it by a full grain, or change bullets.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know many of our listeners think, these guys are crazy. And we
True.
might be, but everybody has their own little thing, and it doesn't mean that anything that any one of us do is wrong or different unless Preston did it.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, but for Ben.
Well, to Ben's point, that's true, and it probably speaks to how much actually doesn't matter when you think about you've got ladder tests and OCW tests and Satterley tests and playing with jump to the rifling and all this stuff, and we all end up shooting
in the
good
same
groups.
spot. That's
all end up getting good groups.
That's
just
right.
Different ways.
Yeah.
And so maybe that just goes to show they're
More than one way.
Yeah,
to
so
skin a
we're not
cat.
saying this is the right way. We're not saying it's the wrong way. We're just saying do
Find
it your way, and
what
these are what we
works
do.
best for
Yeah.
Period.
you and,
Yeah.
and
Period.
your system
well.
and your time.
That's
Yeah.
second.
And your effort.
Find what works best for you. Second, first, go ahead and get into reloading. If
Yeah,
you're
get
not
it
already,
started.
just get started. It's
You
a fun hobby. It's a safe hobby. It's an enjoyable hobby, and
Yeah.
it's something you can pass down to your kids or just share it with a
Yeah.
friend. It's a neat
That's right.
thing to do.
If you've been thinking about it, pull the trigger. No
Yep.
pun intended.
And maybe you look at some Hornady equipment and ask Matt Ritchie questions about it in
Yeah.
tech at
Well-
800-338-3220 if you have any
Yep.
questions.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, Preston. 800-338-3220. Extension 3 gets you right up to tech. Ask for Matt directly or anybody else.
Or anybody else in
Yeah.
tech. That when we were in tech, we all had our own little niche.
Yep.
Our own little thing that we liked to do in reloading. So there's a lot of experience up there.
Well, and I think Matt mentioned it here, and that it plays exactly into where we were going with this is they get questions about everything.
Yeah.
He's got people asking him his opinion on what factory rifle he would buy or what action he would use, what twist rate he would go with. But then, they'll also they'll walk you through setting up a die, or if there's a procedure or a tool, or I saw this on the internet. Do I need a headspace comparator or whatever? Wealth of knowledge up there, all those guys, and they're to help. That's what they're there for. So use that department if you are thinking about reloading, or if you're just getting started, or if you're a seasoned veteran and you run into something that, hey, I don't know about this, give us a call. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and especially over the last couple of years with everybody, with the ammo being so hard to get, the number of people reloading has grown exponentially. And so,
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I remember a time, it might have been 12 years ago, where, you had to reload if you wanted to shoot. Couldn't find anything when we had a presidential change that I
Yeah.
remember.
When you can find it, get it, because
Yep.
you never know when you might not be able to.
It's
Yep.
true. Awesome. Is there anything else you guys want to add in the world of reloading? Collectively, there's a lot of years of reloading experience here at the table. Anything that we missed or that you wanted to hit on before we close this thing out? I know Preston mentioned neck sizing that we didn't really touch on too much.
They can ask us questions at podcast@hornady.com. If you have questions about reloading, I'm answering that email. So hit me up.
Yeah.
Love to chat.
You can hit up tech. You can hit up me in engineering.
Yeah.
I'll answer what I can.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for talking reloading, guys. I've said this on every podcast we've recorded since, I think, June or July. We're getting close to hunting season, and I'm getting excited. And we're talking about reloading,
Yeah.
and my mind's already turning about what bullet I'm going to shoot for this next rifle for this mule deer hunt I have with my dad. And it's just getting exciting. And anytime I can sit down and talk to just a bunch of good dudes about hunting, shooting, reloading, it's just a great day. Good way to kill some time here in the office.
It is. I guess the one thing that I'm all of a sudden spitting in my head that is probably just elementary for us, for the folks that are listening that are new to reloading, trimming cases.
Oh, yeah.
You need to trim. That's a step in the process, too.
We
Cases
glanced over
grow when
that.
they fire.
Yep.
When you size them down, they grow. You got to trim them to stay within that length. So
Yep.
You crack a door open, Ben's going to walk through it.
I did. You cracked
Well,
it
that's
open and I walked
that's a
through it
good
because it's
point.
important.
No, it is.
It's
Yeah, it is.
important.
And brass prep, there's so many different ways to skin
So
that
many
cat
realms.
too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
got
I
to
think-
find what works best for you.
Should add too,
Yeah.
What
and this
works,
is
what fits your budget
Yeah.
as well.
the headspace comparator. That's like a must-have. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. If we're
It's the first tool
yeah.
I recommend over and above
Absolutely.
your press and your dies.
And
You've
a set of
gotta-
calipers.
You've
Yeah.
got to know what where your headspace is at and how far you're moving that shoulder back. Because,
That's right.
for instance, the match that I spoke about that I was at, I had one case that was a little tight on headspace, and everything was dusty and dirty. Cost me about 5 points because I fired it and I couldn't extract it.
Oh,
I had to get a cleaning rod to get it out, but it was tight on headspace, and I felt it when I closed the bolt, and I shot it. It was hot and dusty, and that I could not get it out
Locked
of
her
my
in there.
chamber.
Yeah.
So
And that's I mean, par for the course. First thing I tell folks is headspace. Watch your headspace.
Yep.
Now, dies are set up to just bump a standard headspace. You know, don't be afraid to buy a die and screw it to your shell holder with a little bit of a cam over inside your cases.
You'll
But
be
the
plumb
first
fine.
step you want to do to increase that accuracy, I believe, is watch your headspace and control that.
One thing we can agree on.
Yeah. Now we just
One
ended
thing.
the podcast and started to back up.
Awesome. Well, maybe
we could
do-
talk forever, obviously.
Yeah, we could do a reloading part 2 and maybe get into more specifics. This was, that 30,000-foot view. And
Wave
there's-
tops.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to reload. And, I appreciate you guys talking with us about it and educating our listeners. And, if you guys like this one, reach out to us. Let us know what you like or what content you'd rather have or ideas on topics or questions, podcast@hornady.com. And, we appreciate you tagging along with this one, and we will catch you guys on the next one.